Well, so ransomware works a couple different ways. There are instances where they are taking your stuff and taking it off-site, okay? But in a lot of instances, what they're doing is they're encrypting it on your machine. So at this point, it's absolutely useless to you. There's nothing you can do with it unless you have the very complicated or even simple encryption key. You can't undo it. And so imagine you have just your wedding photos, right? That's always important to everybody. And they were on your computer, and all of a sudden, the next day, you click on it and it doesn't do anything and it's encrypted. Your game's over. The only way out of it's going to be to have a backup, because you're not going to pay the ransomware, because to be very honest, even if they said they just wanted $1,500 from you in cryptocurrency, as soon as you give it to them, it's their choice whether they want to help you or not help you. And if they're the type of people that are doing these bad things, ransomware, they're not going to help you. And then the other thing, to be really honest with you, today it's ransomware. What's it going to be tomorrow? I don't know what it's going to be, Mary Lou, but it's going to be something even trickier. And so once again, I go back to the basics of you got to back up everything. If it's important, back it up. If it's the family photos, if it's documents, it's your tax returns, whatever, business documents, you got to make sure you got them in a couple of places. It's the safest thing you can do for yourself and for your family and your community or the people you work with.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast, where we talk about leadership and what it means to answer the call to leadership and why it matters, not just to my guests, but also to you and the journey that you're on, the exciting things that are coming your way, and the lessons that we've learned from the past. Today is no exception. I have an amazing guest who is joining us today from the state of New Jersey. His name is James Davis. James, are you ready for kickoff?
I am absolutely ready to go, Mary Lou.
That is great. So team, here's some things I know about James. He is the owner and CEO of Tech Commandos, which is a company on the forefront of the new era of hybrid workforce solutions, which has been singled out by Goldman Sachs as a visionary business in the IT sector. So if you are working in an organization or you're working for yourself and this whole new virtual world has been pretty new to you, you're going to want to pay close attention to what James says, because he really is a leader in this space. He understands the needs of the hybrid workplace and is passionate about providing actionable insights to help business leaders navigate this new world. He really is the go-to resource within the hybrid workplace space, and he is here today to help you level the playing field against some of the giants who always seem to have the advantage. And I know, James, you're going to go into a lot more detail about that. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very, very much, Mary Lou.
Yeah. So I'd love for you to start us out today, James, with telling us your story about when you got the call to leadership. How old were you? It may have nothing to do with what you're currently doing now, or maybe it's exactly what you're doing now. But it's so nice to get the context of, why you raised your hand and said, yes, I'm going to pursue leadership in my life.
So it's interesting you should mention that. I think my call to leadership actually started with my family. I've been very, very blessed with a great family. And the one thing my family has done is they have been business leaders. My father, my grandfather, and even I guess it would be one other generation back, but not my great-great-grandfather, but whatever it may be. We're all CEOs in publicly traded companies. So I kind of grew up with a father who had a Harvard MBA and an incredible sense of wanting to have success and was very disciplined and in positive ways. I had an incredible childhood, a very intense father.
I bet.
But I've been very blessed, and now I've taken that, and rather than kind of going with a big size company, I actually run my business with my wife and our employees, and we've had Tech Commandos now 20 years, and so I've had the blessing of leading all the people that have worked for us and being able to do it side by side with my wife.
That's really cool. I didn't realize your company was a couple of decades around, and what has it always been about cloud computing? Because I think 20 years ago was 2002. I mean, we hardly even understood the internet back then.
Yeah, no, I think we were looking up to the clouds and seeing airplanes, honestly. So I've been fortunate that I've been, if you will, a technologist. And Tech Commandos came around in like 2002 as a company that was providing IT services for small and medium-sized businesses. And the great thing about technology, and one of my great passions and love for it, is that it is always mutating and changing and calibrating itself to become better and better. Whether that is as simple as just a computer system, software, we all have seen it in our lives. And so we started out as a little ma-pa IT company and grew it, and we pivoted towards the cloud in 2005, initially just hosting applications, not even saying the word cloud desktop. It was just a hosting of an application. And then in 2014, that's when we really kind of figured it all out. And that is when actually we really did do the cloud desktop and have been just lighting the fire along the way for small, medium-sized businesses.
So could you elaborate for listeners who they've heard this, they may even use these applications. What exactly is the cloud? Like, what is that?
Now, that's a great question. So the cloud, if we kind of go back to what your previous comment was, hey, this internet thing kind of came around in late 90s and 2000. And now, today it's fully integrated. We I think if we ever turned off the internet, we might be in a whole lot of trouble. But the cloud itself is when you're using applications that aren't locally on your machine. So let me give you an example, because we do this every day. When you go to a website and you go shopping at Amazon.com, or you go to ESPN to check the game day scores or last week's, footage, that is the cloud. You're going to a server actually in a data center. I'm telling you the secret behind the cloud now. There are these data centers all over the world. There are servers in there with all this data and ability in there. And you're going to the cloud. It's the same thing with your email. The email, example, Mary Lou, if you sent me an email, it doesn't just come directly right to my computer because it knew where to go. Instead, it hit a couple of servers on the internet that knew where to drop the email and where I was at that moment. And so just take it one step further, the cloud desktop, if you will, imagine your entire desktop was in a server farm or in the cloud, and you had the ability to be using all your programs, all your data, all your information, being able to share that with your colleagues. Your colleagues could either be working in the same office as you are, or they could be working from their homes, or they could be working halfway across the world in a totally different country. And the beauty of what the cloud's going to bring you, other than like an incredibly low cost IT expense for your company, is that you've got a very solid, scalable platform that is all about your business, that somebody can run on any computer in their house. So a little bit of a long answer, but that's where the cloud is.
Well, it's great. I mean, I love visualizing an actual cloud. I know it's not literal, but it's such a great name for what you just described. And, Zoom, we're on a cloud right now. This technology, this Zoom application, I think, aren't we?
You absolutely are.
Yeah.
It's a series of servers in a data center that, unbelievably in just real time, virtual real time, is conducting this whole conversation, recording it. And if we wanted to be doing this with 1,000 people on with us, we could.
Right. It is just amazing. When you look back to the early 2000s, when you first got into IT, I mean, tell us about, did you have a sense of where this was going? How did you know?
So I've always been interested in tech my entire life. And I had been working for some internet startups. And if you sort of go back, if you remember about 2001, there was that .com crash.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I had been fortunate enough that I had been involved with a company that had gone public and was scaling, was on the NASDAQ. And I left them to go work for a couple other startups, but I was literally working for a startup, making great money. And one day they just walked in and said, we're not going to be able to move forward. And they really just couldn't handle, what was that time, the 2001 recession. Obviously, it was like sort of right after 9/11. And I found myself actually at home with a 6.5-month-old.
Mm-hmm.
My wife was still working in Manhattan, which was good. But there became a point where she just turned to me and said, James, just go figure out what you got to do. And I quickly came up with a quick business plan and I started doing the IT. And I started with one customer. And just as a quick side note, that customer decided not to pay me. So, I mean,
of course,
complete discouragement and going to your whole leadership concept. This is when you're really digging in deep, going, don't get down on yourself. Let's get another customer, keep moving. And, in all honesty, we're a 7-figure company. We've been working with over almost 1,000 companies in the cloud. And I've been very blessed, but a lot of tenacity and hard work to get there.
Absolutely. That's what it takes. What's that old adage is that it took me 10 years to become an overnight success. I mean, there's technology has created an illusion of quick success and such. And it's not, everything takes time. The fact that you've been doing this for 20 years and you've gone through some different iterations of the kinds of services that you offer, the focus of your company is a great story. I think, you mentioned the not the recession, but the .com bubble when it popped in the 2001. I had just started teaching at a technical college at that time. And there was a movie, it was a documentary that was made. It was called startup.com. And I used to show that to my students because it was such a great case study of hubris. I was teaching actually literature at a tech school, if you can believe that. But the student, it was part of the curriculum. You want to be human and not just a robot behind, building networks and such. And it generated such interesting conversations about, what does it mean to integrate technology into our lives? I was on the ride of MySpace, which was huge. And all the students were so into that. And it all seems so primitive now when you look back. And I'm sure that you have conversations with your wife and your employees sometimes about, remember back in the day? And, I would love for you to tell a story, James, about something that you have seen that you remember from those early days of IT and tech that, fast forward 20 years, that you just shake your head and say, this is incredible about how far we've really come.
Well, I think that, first of all, I love that film as well, Startup. And I would say that, where technology, it's when you look at technology and what it's done for us as human beings, in that we now have a capacity to be able to get more work done more efficiently and effectively than ever. So as an example, if you kind of remember back, I don't know, some people, I apologize if this is pushing it too far back, but there was a day when the monitor was really kind of just very monochrome. And
I
there
remember.
was the DOS operating system. And it was rough to just get a basic thing done. There was no internet, there was no email, none of that. But then, as an example, if you look at a corporation like Microsoft or even Apple, but let's just focus on Microsoft for the moment, is that they were able to take their operating system and adapt it over the years. And about 97, they were bringing in the internet browser that we know it's actually retired now, but Internet Explorer. And even then, you could have never guessed that you just might be going shopping on Amazon on a regular basis. And if you turn to today, all of a sudden, what the internet was then and what it is today is a remarkable difference, no different than an operating system being a monochrome, non-layered event to this incredible capability today where, today people are spending more time on their phones, which is just another operating system, going on the internet and enjoying themselves. And, there's some good and some bad to this. I've got two children, one in college, one about to go to college. And, sometimes I have to say, stop it with the phones when it comes time for dinner. But, technology wholeheartedly, I believe, has only enhanced us. And, just back to the whole cloud desktop concept is that's just another layer of it. And in all honesty, one of the things I tell my wife, funny enough, in our business is that I can tell you what's going to happen for probably the next 6 months. But after that, everything sort of changes. There's some sort of a new adaptation to the technology, a new level of security for the technology, whatever it may be. And, but that's the beauty of innovation and what we're able to do as human beings.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of security, could you talk about what small business leaders need to know about remote security? That's always a topic of conversation. And I know it's a fear of some people of why they don't make the transition because they feel like I'm exposing my, hard work or, my data, my bank account. What are some things that you help business leaders understand about protecting their very precious data when they transition to the cloud?
Sure. Well, I'm going to say this is with or without the transition to the cloud, to be very honest with you. And this is even to everybody who isn't a business owner at the moment. You have to back up your data. And I mean, back it up. In fact, it's not backed up unless it's really backed up in 3 different places, is what a lot of people will say, because they can't take it away from you if you got it sitting on a hard drive somewhere else. So as an example, and I'll parlay this into the cloud desktop, is that we image our servers every night, and you should make sure whoever it is, whether it's Tech Commandos or it's another company, is that they are imaging your data every night. And then are they encrypting the backups and putting them on separate devices? And then what we do is we tell our clients, we take no offense if you want to put on another backup program on here. We'll make a couple recommendations and back up your data to another third-party resource. And it's that level of redundancy that is super important. Now, there are other levels, because you mentioned security, things like biometrics, something called 2-factor authentication is critical, rotating passwords, having complex passwords, and keeping it refreshed at all times. And so just, for anybody on here, whether, it's your business not on the cloud, or it's even your personal home, rotate your passwords, make sure you back up all the data, especially those photographs of your little ones, important documents, things like that. All you got to do is get yourself a hard drive, put it in a safe that maybe is fireproof rated, and you've just put yourself in a great position because nobody knows, we've heard of things like ransomware, which is very, very tricky stuff. And honestly, once it's happened, for most people, you're in trouble. And the only way you're going to get out of the situation is to have that data somewhere else, nicely backed up in a good, safe way.
Okay, that's interesting. I know my dad, when he was alive, was a victim of ransomware. And it was, I remember it was really, really ugly. Why is it that once you've been a victim of ransomware, you just said something that really piqued my interest? And I think it piques, my listeners' interest because we hear stories or we know people who literally have had their computers hijacked by these, criminal operations. Why are you in trouble once that happens? Because they get your personal data and then sell it or use it?
Well, so ransomware works a couple different ways. There are instances where they are taking your stuff and taking it off site. Okay. But in a lot of instances, what they're doing is they're encrypting it on your machine. So at this point, it's absolutely useless to you. There's nothing you can do with it unless you have the very complicated or even simple encryption key. You can't undo it. And so imagine you have just your wedding photos, right? That's always important to everybody. And they were on your computer, and all of a sudden, the next day, you click on it, and it doesn't do anything, and it's encrypted. Your game's over. The only way out of it's going to be to have a backup, because you're not going to pay the ransomware. Because to be very honest, even if they said they just wanted $1,500 from you in cryptocurrency, as soon as you give it to them, it's their choice whether they want to help you or not help you. And if they're the type of people that are doing these bad things, ransomware, they're not going to help you. And then the other thing, to be really honest with you, today it's ransomware. What's it going to be tomorrow? I don't know what it's going to be, Mary Lou, but it's going to be something even trickier. And so once again, I go back to the basics of you got to back up everything. If it's important, back it up. If it's the family photos, if it's documents, it's your tax returns, whatever business documents, you got to make sure you got them in a couple of places. It's the safest thing you can do for yourself and for your family and your community or the people you work with.
Yeah. Well, that's really, really good information because we do spend so much of our time now on our computers, our phones, our tablets. And, you know, if you and listeners are anything like me, I mean, I think I have like 30,000 photos on my iPhone, you know, and they're up in the cloud, a lot of them. And they go way back, you know, many, many years. But at the same time, I think we become complacent and think, oh, everything's fine. You know, we're busy with all these other things. So it's really good to hear someone with your experience in the space reminding us, back it up, you know, back everything up.
And we take it so seriously at our company, just as an example. We literally have an employee every morning. There's an individual on our team that his single sole job is to go check all of our servers for all the backups happening. And if any of them didn't happen, figure out what happened and fix it and get it backing up. And so that, you know, that kind of proactive commitment to backup, take it that if I'm doing it, you all ought to be doing it.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
You know, even if it's like every Friday, you just make sure your PC's backed up. That way, look, your worst case scenario is you might have 6 days worth of stuff missing, but at least you don't have a lifetime worth of things missing as long as you've been backing up just once a week.
Right. Oh, tell us a story about a time, James, when you either witnessed a business that they, you know, everything went wrong, or maybe it happened to you. What are some things that can go wrong besides the ransomware, you know, for businesses that aren't backing up, or they either don't know to do it, or they're like, oh, we're not going to put money into that. It always seems like that's the case, especially around cybersecurity. It's only in hindsight, oh, we should have, right? The shoulda, coulda, woulda. But paint that picture for us.
Sure. So as I kind of mentioned early on, we were doing the networking thing. We also started working with a piece of software called ACT. It was a CRM, customer relations management software. Bottom line is we were experts in that software. And so there was a company that was, I think it was about 12 employees. They were manufacturers reps in the food space. They would take care of restaurants, prisons, schools, bringing all the equipment to make a kitchen. With that said, they were using QuickBooks for accounting, which is a common name for software. We were doing their ACT. We had nothing to do with the QuickBooks. Bottom line is, this poor company thought they were backing everything up and had a full systems crash. And the good news is we were able to get our data back because we had set up a separate resource for that to work off of. But at the end of the day, he lost his accounting data. And I mean, just imagine, you might as well, if you're not in business, think of that like all of a sudden the bank lost your checking account information, all the balances, your money, everything, the account numbers, PINs, you name it. It's as bad as get. They were unable to even get anything back. And later then, you know, they were working with a competitive company, but I just did this one little thing for them, the ACT software. You know, sadly, actually, the good news is it didn't capitate the company. But statistically, if you lose your accounting data, they say you've probably got less than 6 months to go.
Wow.
It's really bad. I mean, you know, with any business, could you imagine all the payroll data lost, things like that? And then, so once again, this is why you've got to back up your data. I mean, you know, I know we were here coming to talk about cloud desktop and things like that, but, you know, the backup is the key to the game. Mm-hmm. You know, it's your only way out, because I can't tell you what the bad thing that's going to happen to you in the future, whether it's the next version of ransomware, whether it is something just catastrophically happens. But if you've got a hard drive or you've got it in a third spot, you're in a good place. You're in a good place, because then you'll be able to get it back. No different than Mary Lou with your pictures. They're both on your computer. They're probably actually on your iPad, because I think you probably got an iPad. Mm-hmm. But they're also, as you mentioned, in the iCloud, which is a product of Apple's, the iCloud, and it has backup. And it's that level of redundancy. And then even in a data center, you know, I didn't want to go down this deep of the rabbit hole. I'll apologize, but, you know, it isn't just your data isn't on a singular hard drive. We have what's called a RAID 10 configuration, which is there are 4 hard drives that your data lives on, and it would take a failure of 2 to stop it out.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is not, that just doesn't happen. So
Sure.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
No, it's good to paint the picture. Again, yes, you're getting into the weeds of the work that you do, but for anybody who, again, is either running a business or working for a company, and the conversation, if leaders aren't having a conversation about how do we protect our information, our data, our money, because we are so reliant now on technology, you got to ask yourself, what are you doing then? Like that. To me, it has to be one of the top conversations that a company has around protecting their data and doing all the things that you're talking about.
And there's some other reasons to be on the cloud desktop other than obviously the security and backup. I mean, there are reasons that if you want to scale your company either up or down, that it becomes really easy to do. The cost factor, IT alone is almost a 10% spend for most companies. It's actually 8.9%. And when you look at cloud computing, it's a fraction of the price. And that's, funny enough, going back to the previous question, about technology and the great things and that it's done for us. Well, one of the things is that cloud desktop is so cost effective for clients.
Right. Yeah. I think about, there was a day, and I've been using computers, as many of us have, for, 3 decades now. And I remember a time in the 2000s, particularly, when you had to buy a version of the software that you were going to use every year. Be like I want to say like Microsoft Word was one of them, and you had to physically get the disk, load it into your computer. You open it up with the disk drive, load it on, and then a year later, you needed to get the next version. What I love about cloud programs is the updates just happen automatically. Now, there can be a cost involved in that, and that's okay because, companies are in business to make money. But I can't even remember the last time, James, when I actually held a disk and was inserting it into a disk drive. I also remember, and I'm sure you do as well, the floppy disks, but they were hard. They were little square guys with the little metal piece that would move over and open the case. My father has boxes and boxes of all these floppy disks. I don't even know what to do with them. I'm like, is any of this data even good anymore? So the whole evolution that you've been talking about is fascinating. And it's also sometimes you sit back and you say, what do I do with all this data? Is it really that important to keep everything? I don't know.
Yeah, no. Well, I guess my advice for your father is that they don't sell those hard drives anymore. So
no, they don't.
Unless he goes to eBay, I'm not sure he's going to be in luck. But, that's the beauty of what, funny enough, it almost makes me think of that there is more power in your little phone than they had on the Apollo mission going to the moon.
Wow.
And that's just unbelievable. I mean, they were working with computers, pulling together the trajectory for the Apollo modules, and they were literally in the size of a school was the computer. And today, you've got more power inside your little cell phone. And it really is crazy. And I do remember all the diskettes. I was a student of them, along with the floppies when they were like 5.5 inches, if you remember that.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah. But, to give you a parallel to that, does anybody remember the 8-track tape?
Sure.
The cassette tape? Then the DVD? Now, what are you doing for music? Oh, I just downloaded off of iTunes.
Right.
So just
or
the
stream
evolution
it
of technology.
off of Spotify.
Yeah, even better. Stream it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling to think what's next. And that's what my next question to you is. I know you don't have a real crystal ball, but you've been around the space long enough to identify some patterns. And I would love for you to share with us, what do you see within your sphere of IT and the cloud-based technology is having the biggest impact on us, let's say for the next 5 years? What do you see coming down the pike? Anything?
Well, I do. I don't want to scare everybody. It's not that scary. And the good news is that we made a conscious decision with our company not to partake in this trend. But sadly, I don't know if you've even noticed it, but getting tech support now is getting tougher and tougher to be able to even talk to somebody.
Yes.
So the trend you're going to see over the next 5 years is we would rather have you email or chat with us via text about your issue, but we don't want somebody to have a phone conversation with you. And even some of our competitors right now are doing that. And the one thing I can definitely say with Tech Commandos, as long as I'm at the helm, that someone's always going to answer that phone for tech support. We don't even do queues at our company. We literally have what we call an expediter, and she is there to just take the call, route it, whether it's to get it scheduled, get you with the tech because of an emergency, whatever it may be. But, we're losing our sense of customer service. And, the the pandemic has done nothing but accelerate some of this. Companies see the cost of having support, and it's easier just to do it, not be talking to people, and just do it, automated, whether it be a little bot doing it or whether it's chat. And unfortunately, that is the devil in disguise, because the one thing you got to have is customer service. I don't think you can't have leadership without the customer service, and the absence of it is terrible.
I agree 100%. Yeah. I'm thinking about the times when I think I actually was communicating with a bot and it didn't understand what I was saying. And I got so frustrated to the point where I'm like, I'm just not even going to use this company, because, you and I are of a generation, probably, we're both Gen Xers. We're probably the last generation we're kind of in between, the millennials who grew up to a degree with technology being how it is. Certainly your children, my children are, heavily tech savvy because they don't really remember life without it in the way, not that we didn't have technology that was revolutionary, to your point about the CD and the DVD. I mean, that was revolutionary back in the 80s and 90s. But to actually be able to talk to somebody on the phone and get your questions answered, to me, is something worth investing in. I don't care what kind of company you are. I don't understand if you have somebody sitting in front of a screen texting you, why can't they be talking to you? I just don't get it. I don't. Do you? What's the rationale?
The rationale is they can be talking to multiple people, and if they're on the phone, they really has to be a one-to-one.
Got it.
Now, I believe the one-to-one is the answer, because I think at the end of the day, now I'm going to put my business leader hat on, but we know that one of our biggest costs is support. And what we try to do is make sure the first time we work with a customer, we get everything done right. Now, we're not perfect. Nobody's going to be. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to talk to somebody. I mean, you want to talk about frustration? I mean, even myself, and not that I'm that old, but it's just so dangerous where they're all going. And I mean, for me, it's good news because some of my competitors are doing it, and we're getting customers for the exact reason that, we're more of a boutique service. Like I kind of mentioned before, it has a ma-pa feel to it. I'm totally accessible. My wife, Jerry, is totally accessible. All of our employees, if there's a problem, they're going to come right to me and tell me. And if you don't have that, and I realize, businesses want to scale, they want to be at $100 million. First of all, it's few and far between to make it. And even a lot of the $100 million companies, I'll give you an example, are, Apple is still doing great support. You can call them and get support on very old stuff. And, they know the value of what a customer is. Another company, GoDaddy, all of the phone support is there. They can talk to them, understand them. And I try to model after these companies, because I've seen the success that they have derived by acting that way in the marketplace.
I think that what you're saying is such an important part of running a business today. It's, you're going to have to pay to have people on the phone, but what price are you paying if you don't?
Yeah,
You're
they're really
seeing
salespeople.
Right. I really can't stand when I get into a phone tree and I have to go so many numbers and deep in until I finally get to somebody. And now I've noticed that it used to be that you could call and then immediately push 0 and it would connect you to a representative or, whatever they call themselves today. But a lot of them now have overridden that. You when you push 0, it'll tell you that's not an option or that's an invalid entry. I'm like, wow, you are not, you really don't want me. Right. You really don't want me to talk to somebody. Oh my goodness. That's fascinating. I was making some notes as you were talking that, accessibility is a big piece of what you just said and how accessible are your people, including your top leadership. My mom and I are currently watching that speaking of Apple, that Apple 4-part series called We Crashed about the WeWork story. Adam Newman and his wife. And, again, a lot of us lived through the WeWork whole explosion of those shared communal office spaces. And for solopreneurs and freelancers, it was, such a cool concept. And yet you want to talk about somebody who kind of lost sight of a lot of things, became less and less accessible to the front line. And your customers, to your point, sounds like your company is actually gaining some customers because they're unhappy with other people's lack of customer service. It makes a difference. It really does.
It really does. And I mean, look, you know what? I'm going to take it back to you asked a really interesting question. No one's ever had me even bring up the fact that my family had been in leadership positions in the past. But my father, when I was younger, I had a newspaper out and he would help me on Sundays because the papers were really heavy. He would make me, and I despised it in the beginning, but understood it later on. He would make me take the newspaper, open up the storm door of the front door, not the door, but the storm door, the glass door, take the paper, face the paper so that when they opened their door, it opened up to the front page. Okay. And this was a man who was definitely very much customer service savvy. And what I later found out, well, boy, did that pay off with tips and being able to run a very profitable business. And I have just continued, the legacy that my father, and I'm sure he may have learned it from my grandfather and his father-in-law, that you got to give the customer service. And they were in retail of all things. They were actually with a company called May Department Stores, which is now Macy's.
Sure.
But, I grew up with a long lineage of retail family. And that customer service thing, my father made it really clear. And I've lived by it with this business. As I said, do we do everything right? Nope. We'll definitely make a mistake or two, but you will always get a conversation. And you have to. You can't. I mean, first of all, these are people's businesses that I'm working with and responsible for, and their data. And I take it very, very seriously.
Absolutely. Good customer service can be the linchpin between, your success and longevity and closing up shop. I noticed today, just when I'm out and about, when I'm in retail establishments, I always go out of my way to be extra nice to the people working behind the register because I know, first of all, it's a very difficult job. You're on your feet all day. You're dealing with a predominantly angry public. and coming out of the pandemic, I've noticed, and I've had conversations with a lot of different people in banks, people in clothing stores, grocery stores, who just say it's how grumpy a lot of Americans are, and to just be kind to actually ask somebody, how are you today? Have that conversation and be a human can go so far. And even if you're not face to face, if you're on the phone with somebody who's called in, who's having an issue with a product they bought from you, or in your case, the service that they have, to be able to, first of all, diffuse the frustration, and answer questions confidently, clearly, get to a solution. You can't beat that. You just can't. And I think I think you're onto something, James, that companies who are sacrificing that part of their business for what they see as this is the future. Nobody's going to interact with humans. It's all going to be, bots going forward. I think that's a mistake.
And I agree 1,000%.
I agree with, I just think that's a mistake. I mean, we're in trouble if that's where we're headed.
It is, sadly. I told you, I was worried about answering that question, but I wanted to be really honest with you, and it's sad. It's very sad. I see it all the time. And, to me, it's more important the support you're going to get with any vendor than sometimes even what the product is, because there's plenty of people that have competing products, right? But can you go back and have a conversation? Can you go back and rectify things? And, at the retail level, whether that's, in your business life, your personal life, it has to be, we're going to lose it if we keep automating every single thing. Now, I don't think I'm wrong, but I truly believe, especially with technology, where most people have an inherent fear, you better have somebody on the phone that's compassionate and that can understand and resolve the issue to your satisfaction.
Yeah. I mean, compassion, understanding, listening, acknowledging the frustration goes so far. I have witnessed when, it's knowing how to diffuse a customer's emotions, because people usually aren't calling customer service to just go, wow, I just wanted to call to say, I hope you're having a great day. We're calling customer service because we got a problem and we want you to fix it like now. Oh my goodness. Well, I want to move away from sad predictions. We're going to hope that there are enough smart people out there who realize, listen, we've got to have live people on our front line at all times. But I want to take us into the part of the show, James, I call touchdown. So you're a football fan. You understand that what happens when your team is down by 4 points and there are less than 30 seconds left on the clock. You're in the red zone. So it's now or never. Tell us a story about a time when you helped to get that ball into the end zone for the game-winning touchdown.
Well, it may be a little bit more broad than you wanted, like you wanted a really specific one, but I will tell you that when this pandemic happened, the first thing that came to mind was the safety of our own employees. And I had one that was actually ill with cancer at the time. And we were very quick to move to get them out of our offices and out to their homes. So probably 2 weeks before, they sort of raised the flag and said, everybody needs to work from home. We already had our team there. But then found was that there was a scramble moment where people didn't understand how to pivot and be able to run their businesses remotely. And that's where, if you will, that was that 4-yard moment, 2 minutes to go situation. And we're just going to have to win the game. And we really dug in and we started working with companies to get them up and over and into the cloud. And at one point we were literally doing them 2 in a day. It was crazy. And we were moving so quickly to bring on onboarding clients because they needed to get back to work. And, one of the things is now it's been over 2 years. And this concept of having a remote workforce and having people to be able to work where they want, anywhere, whether it's in a different country or a different location. And it's now part of the workplace. I mean, I'm reading, article after article in Wall Street Journal, New York Times about, the 5-day work week. 3 of them are going to be working from home for a lot of companies. And even still today, there are companies that traditionally work from the office place, like law firms as an example, where a lot of times, they need to kind of collaborate and be there together. where they're having to utilize the cloud, both at the workplace level, or as you'd mentioned, even using Zoom for meetings. All of this is sort of this new rationale that has come as this is the reality of post pandemic, or we're at the later stages of the pandemic at this point. And, it has been a catalyst to cause these technologies to become so mainstream so quickly. So right now, I don't think there's a business you can't not have some sort of remote workforce cloud desktop solution in hand to take advantage of what's happening, let alone all of a sudden you can pull talent from all over the world if you want.
Right.
So that's my 4-yard touchdown scenario.
That's a good one. It really, really is. And I'm even companies that require people to be in person. I think of my brother who runs a construction company, for example. I mean, we're not building houses in the cloud, but their business does use or has people on board that are using cloud-based technologies to run payroll, to manage, email. There isn't a company out there that isn't touched by cloud-based software to some degree, even if you're a very simplified business, and even if your business depends on being face-to-face or on-site. Certainly bus drivers and pilots and things like that. But the cloud is still right there. It's really interesting to think about, and how quickly it has come about. The pandemic definitely did accelerate the rate at which people adopted different methods of continuing to get work done. And, kudos to you and your team at Tech Commandos for being able to say, listen, we got you. We're going to get you through this. It might be a little bit messy, but trust us. That's the mark of great leadership. And I can tell, James, that you love what you do. You're a committed business leader. Your company is offering a tremendous service. And for people listening who might want to learn more about you and what Tech Commandos offers, where do you hang out online?
Sure. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually have a dedicated page for all of your subscribers. And if you just go to techcommandos.com/play your position, I'm going to have a video there thanking you, as well as just telling you, look, if you're at all interested in understanding about the cloud and what it can do for your business, we sit down with businesses on a regular basis for about 15, 20 minutes and discuss, how this all comes about. And we'll have the ability for you to schedule a call with any one of us, as well as we always do a 14-day free trial. We would actually prefer you started working with us with a 14-day trial. And then the other thing is that our contract actually allows you out at any time with 30 days notice. So I like to kind of say, if we suck, you can absolutely leave. And it's just, we believe people need to have choices. And one of the things is we want to make it easy for them, and that they're never held over their head by a long contract for a year or two, that kind of thing. So it's only 30 days notice, you're in and out. But the most important thing is the first step, which is if you go to techcommandos.com/play your position, we'll have some information there for you. There's even going to be a white paper there for you to read. So whether you want to talk to us, not talk to us, watch the video, there's a lot of information there. And at the end of the day, we're just here to help you.
I love it. So team, you can go there yourself. You can also click the link on James's show notes page at pyppodcast.com, where, you can get the resources that he and his team have put together. Take advantage of what guests share. There's always some value, even if you're not quite ready, or maybe you're already using the cloud, but you want to learn more about other things. I mean, we've had a great conversation today where you took us inside what the cloud is, all the way to the security questions we need to all be thinking about, and your own leadership journey, James, and the influence of your father. I'm really glad you shared those stories, because that's what we remember is who shaped us. And it might have gotten some listeners today thinking about their own parents and the role that they played and the leadership journey that they are on. And before we officially say goodbye, would you be so kind as to share with us who your team is, who or what are you watching on Saturday and or Sunday during football season?
Well, so I grew up in Colorado, and we've done well as the Broncos some years and not so well some other years. And so I am a diehard Broncos fan, even though my wife has transplanted me to New Jersey, and I'm soon to be going down to Florida. And I'm going to actually get interested in the Tampa Bay, not because the quarterback snuck back, but I was even going to do it if he wasn't there. But for me, having a good Sunday football game is a great way to go. I was actually blessed that I actually played in high school and I played 1 year in college. My two boys played when they were younger. And so we have a good little football family. We enjoy it. It's a good team sport where, there really is so much leadership value in there. And there's a lot of learning. And, one of the things is that it's not about the destination. It's about the journey getting there. And I think if you look at any game or any season for any team, it's always that journey where you really get the depth and you see the ups and the downs and all the good stuff.
I couldn't agree more. And what a fabulous way to wrap this up today, James. I wish you and your team at Tech Commandos much continued success. And thank you for sharing your journey here at the Play Your Position podcast.
Thank you, Mary Lou.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.